hello and good evening. Welcome to the CREEDCAST. This is Squad Show time of the week, of course, recording here late in the evening, Thursday, the 25th of June. That means Saturday, the 27th of June. We have a Port Adelaide game coming up, and it is no bigger than the Showdown. Looking forward to it, 7:05 p.m. on Saturday evening. Of course, your Port Adelaide Footy Club playing their home showdown for the year against the Adelaide Crows. So a massive game coming up, of course. If you're watching on YouTube, in the background, you can see that beautiful, beautiful prison bar Guernsey that's hanging behind me that we'll be wearing this week. Of course, the nod to the 1914 Invincibles squad that just swept all before them in that dominant 1914 season that we're honouring with that particular stylisation of the prison bars that we will be wearing on Saturday evening. So a wonderful occasion to kind of celebrate and honour the history. We talked about it a little bit a few weeks ago on our squad show leading into, I believe, the West Coast game. So go back and listen to that one. I think it's episode 272. Just like the first half of the episode is talking about the Guernseys, the prison bar Guernsey, particularly this iteration of it, as well as some other stuff and towards the history of the club. So yeah, a little bit of chat there. But just to reiterate, it's a wonderful occasion to celebrate. Of course, the game that I'll preview shortly. There's a little bit of trepidation about what could happen this weekend, considering our injury struggles and where the team's at versus where the Crows are at. That's an on the field kind of thing to discuss soon here in this preview episode. But of course, I think it's just worth noting it's an incredible thing that we do have finally won the honour over the last few years to be able to wear this Guernsey in our home showdown every year, which is it's very, very important to honour that history and teach about the history and continue to keep it in kind of the forefront of people's minds about who we are as a club. Of course, we as a club have gone through a bit of turmoil over our journey in the AFL in particular, with people trying to strip away that identity and belittle the identity and do certain things to try to make Port Adelaide smaller than what they are. Which in reality, we are just one of the great sporting institutions of world sport. But people have tried their darndest to kind of belittle that and kind of take that away from us. But ultimately, the reason we get to wear this Guernsey in this showdown every year, and the reason we get to have 1870 on a Guernsey and all that, is because we are truly the one club, and the one club that has been around for 150 plus years now, and wearing this Guernsey honours that. And certainly this iteration of it, honouring a particular moment in that early first 50 years of history that really, really kind of started to build what was to come across the next 100 plus years in the absolute behemoth that we are in the world sporting stage. So it's wonderful to see us wearing this Guernsey. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it looks on field. Looking forward to seeing how the long sleeve looks, like assuming Aaliyah will be rocking the long sleeve with that traditional the white sleeves on the black Guernsey that it is. So really excited to see that, and just to see it out in the field, and hoping the players, regardless of how the result goes, do the Guernsey its due honour in playing a good brand of football in it, which we've, despite the results this year, we've been seeing some good signs of good brand of football, if inconsistent and not at all polished in any way. But that has been the journey of us as a rebuilding side this year. I am, obviously, the fact that I've been talking for a couple of minutes here, I am on my own for this preview tonight. Jamie sends his most sincerest apologies, but also he's got no reason to feel too bad. He was actually looking forward to this. He iterated it to me in text message earlier, a couple of hours ago, when we were having a chat in text, and he said he'd been ruminating on a lot of things, had a lot of things he wanted to talk about, and then kind of didn't put two and two together, and that he and his lovely partner had a date night planned, and with a young family, sometimes getting time together for date nights is a little bit more difficult than it was a few years ago. And as always, I've said to him a lot in our chats as we go along this podcast journey. Both of us are working men, work fairly full time, and work fairly full time. We work full time and work pretty hard as well. And obviously, then around that, you have family life, and him is certainly with a young family as well. I always say that the podcast is something we do as a labor of love. And look, I'd love the podcast to be my full time job and put even more time into it than I already do. But the fact is that we are going to have these moments where the timings don't line up, and he has no reason to apologise for spending some time with his lovely partner and taking some time together. But he did send his sincerest apologies. He was looking forward to it, and I'm sure he's going to be looking forward to the review, win or loss. Although win or loss depends on how bad a loss could be. We certainly didn't look forward to last year's second Showdown review by any means. But yeah, look, let's hope we're coming in and some off the back of whatever the game may be, something to chat about on Tuesday when he's back, and obviously the release on Wednesday for the review episode. But yeah, he did say that he also was really, disappointed not to get to express his disdain for the plastic franchises, how he put it, which is certainly something he said on the podcast plenty of times as well. So I said I'd do my darndest to convey that to you, the Creed family, of Jamie's disdain, of which I share as well. It's certainly not a stretch for me to express that for him and kind of paraphrase his words, because I share those same feelings. And I guess that's the first point of call to start on tonight. Is just like these weeks, these Showdown weeks, give us the opportunity to engage in one of the best rivalries in world sport. And I've been a part of a few. I'm actually wearing, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing an Oregon hoodie that I often end up in on podcasts, particularly in winter. It's just one of my comfortable hoodies. I'm actually just still wearing what I was wearing at work earlier, so it probably smells a little bit from a little bit of outdoor maintenance work, but it's still comfortable in this real chill that we've got in the first real chill of winter we've had in the last week. This rivalry. The Oregon hoodie. I've been involved in as an Oregon student, Oregon Washington, which is a very very deep-seated rivalry in college football, and been to Portland versus Seattle soccer games, and been involved in a lot of rivalries around the world. And this one, Port Adelaide versus Adelaide, is every bit as hateful and spiteful in kind of its origin story and how it continues to be played and fought. And, whether it be the off-field stuff, and, I know some of it over the last few years has seemed a bit contrived to some, but I know from in between that a fair few fans do feel it very, very, a lot of people try to, it's nothing. It's just a little bit of pantomime villain stuff. But I do know that genuinely there is, from whether it be players or fans, there is, a lot of us out there, and certainly we're included, that find a fair bit of spite in it, in genuine areas. The origin story of this rivalry, and it's probably a time for another podcast, because you could go hours on just that. But the way the Crows came into the competition and took our rightful spot there, and then we eventually get in, and then we're constantly belittled. The Crows are one of the main architects, and their fan base are one of the main architects of trying to kind of separate the history of a club that is very, very much the one club, but they try to find little tidbits and turn words to make the history of our club seem more complicated than it is, which it isn't. It's just that they try to rewrite history a little bit, which is rewriting history is the space that a lot of kind of plastic kind of people exist in when you're not sold with the earth and you don't really have any history or depth to you as a person, as a club. All you have is to kind of rewrite other people's history, because you have nothing to rewrite yourself. So that's kind of the origin story of them versus us, and how they try to make themselves feel better by belittling ours, to make themselves feel better about their lack of history is just one of those kind of areas in the rivalry that is why it means so much to me to win these ones. And look, I will get into the nuts and bolts of the game itself in a moment, but I don't have any great hopes of winning this weekend, but I do just hope that we go out there and engage in the contest with a good heart and Port Adelaide spirit, and hopefully, what miracles could come after that, who knows? But as far as the rivalry goes, it is absolutely something I absolutely engage in as a rivalry that means something. Whether it be just the sporting stuff, or even just we go larger socially, the Port Adelaide versus Adelaide, got the working class versus the rich cunts and their Cardinet and cheese boards. And yeah, it's just it's a rivalry that has so many layers to it. Whether or not you choose to engage in it to that level is totally up to you, and I'll leave that up to you. But that's where I sit on it, as I see a lot of there's a little bit of, you can say I'm getting too serious about it, but as part of rivalry is having some fun with it. I'm like, it is class warfare. It is a sporting rivalry, but it is class warfare as well. And they are a plastic franchise that stands for nothing, whereas we are the working class and the foundation of this state, and we deserve much more respect than they give us. And that's why it was one of the many reasons this rivalry means so much. And, I won't speak names, but I don't know if the right word is lucky enough. I just have a friendship with a former Port player, and I actually was just hanging out with him a couple of weeks ago at a show in Adelaide, and he expressed pretty similarly that an absolute disdain for them and no respect for them as a club, and has enjoyed the rivalry as both a player and as a fan himself. And says one of the few swear words. It is a swear word in his house is crows over F-bombs. It is the crows is a swear word in his house. So, whether, there's a lot of, and that's one of those things, a lot of people go, oh, the players don't really believe it. And I'm like, well, that's a bloke that's played 100 plus for Port that definitely does believe it. So it is real. This rivalry is real. And again, like I said, this game may not, it is sad as we transition into just previewing it here quickly. And like I said, quickly is, quickly on this podcast is a term that is loosely used, but I am going to try to be have a little bit more brevity to tonight's episode, so you don't have to listen to me ramble on for too long. But while there's not too much hope, I go into this week's game with a lot of trepidation because of the injuries and all that stuff. You still do hope and look towards those games like that 2006 Showdown where we weren't considered a hope in hell, and we got over the line there, and you just hope some kind of miracle like that could be available to us this weekend. But such is the lengths of the gap between the two sides at the moment on the field, despite our form this year. I think it was David King on one of the shows this week was talking about how genuinely he thinks we're one of the harder teams to play just because of how we structure up and kind of the ethos to how we play, the kind of defensive step, the kind of the structure of the team building from the defensive side means it's harder to score against us, and we're always going to keep a game close. But at the end of the day, our attack has really, really faltered over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and that is allowing teams, even if they're going to find it hard to score on us, they also know they just have to score enough. And generally, if you're scoring 80 points or more over the last 8 to 10 weeks, more or less, you're probably getting the win on us, because I think we scored 95 against Geelong. We scored 90 odd against, I think even West Coast we didn't get there. Who am I thinking of that we played only a couple last week? We've scored 90 a couple of times, but generally we're in the 70s range, and our scores just, if you can score 80 or more against us, you're probably getting pretty close to a win. And I think the Crows have got the capability to do that this weekend. Unfortunately, I'll talk about the ins and outs in a moment, but since I am on scoring and whatnot, a couple of stats, like the Crows, their average score this year is just a touch under 90 points. We're at just a touch over 80. So you're already seeing there's a 10-point discrepancy in our average scoring. And I think our average score is probably helped by a couple of results. But again, like I said, we're between, generally in the 70 to 80 range. They score points from turnover. They do score a goal more from there. Points from stoppage, they're a goal more there. We do average just a couple more shots a game, a touch, half an inside 50 more. So there's a lot of areas where it's close. Defensively, their defense is marginally better than ours at 79.3 points a game versus 81. So again, there's marginal differences there, but it's just they're shading a couple of areas, key areas, and we have more inside 50s a game, but their score is better, which is just again our inside 50 conversion, and not so much the inside 50 conversion, or certainly conversion rates of your Mitch Georgiades and co have been diminishing returns lately, but it is because of the inside 50 entries have been of diminishing returns and putting Mitch and Co at shots, from the 35, and 35 is probably being generous. They're really 40 to 50 meters or more out from goal generally, and we're just not getting good opportunities at goal due to how we're entering the ball inside 50. And so, regardless of how good these scores look, and then also that defensively, they don't allow as many scores per inside 50 as we do. So we our stat says our attack is marginally better as scores versus inside 50, but their defense says that they allow less scores per inside 50. And I think just in those marginal differences that that's kind of where the game will be won and lost, and particularly with some of obviously our injuries as well and the changes we've made, which again I'll get to them in a moment. Just when you look at the stats already, you're just going. But if I was looking at all those stats and we were going in with Asava playing and with you and McKinley playing, like if we just hadn't had too much absolute catastrophic injury occur in the last week or so, I'd be going, oh, maybe, okay, there's all these stats, we can mitigate these differences. And there's certainly some other differences as well. The clearance game is very, very similar as well. Marks inside 50, we actually take, a couple more. Disposal efficiency for the season is that they're marginally better. Contested possessions, they do have a lot more contested possessions, which has always been an issue with the Crows. The other thing that we've talked about a lot, and certainly in the first showdown this year, their ground ball dominance, ground balls in general, but particularly their contested possession after clearance, ground ball after clearance, first to the ball, first usage after clearance and stoppage. They were just better in those areas. And that's an area I don't see getting much better this week. We need to somehow find a way to bridge those gaps. And it's going to be just intent and hunt. And some of those changes might help with that. But then obviously we're just missing so many key players now that it really does make you wonder if we can bridge those gaps. That's the thing, is there's statistical gaps to bridge. And it's something I talk about a lot when we do these preview shows, is you look at the gaps, look at your strengths, look at your weaknesses. And when you're looking at weaknesses, you're looking to just, maybe bring that gap in. You're not looking to win the area sometimes, though if you win the area, then fucking fantastic. Like that's a better result than you could ever usually hope for. Usually just, again, like I said, hoping to bridge those gaps. But I just think with the injuries and whatnot that we just might be struggling to bridge that gap. Again, I look at my marks inside 50, and this year we average more, but it's just like it feels like that's been a bit of diminishing return. Like, our marks inside 50, Jamie brings us up a lot, and I really do enjoy it, and I'd love to see the metric. It would be interesting to have marks inside 50, but marks inside 30 would be a really interesting stat, because that one, we average 2.5 marks inside 50 more than they do, but I'd love to see what their marks inside 30 mark is, and I'd say that one might be more. And our marks inside 50 number, I think, is being franked by a lot of marks between 30 and 50. And that is, again, a part of our problem in converting inside 50s to score, is the fact that we're getting so many shallow entries inside 50 rather than really penetrating ones, and the Crows have been better at that recently. They've had Riley Thilthorpe getting some form. Darcy Fogarty's back in the side. Taylor Walker's had some rest, but he's back in. So they're getting their bigs are starting to hum a little bit again. And of course, when your bigs start to hum and they can start getting they're starting to take their marks and they're starting to structure up the way they were at their best last year, that's going to help out the smalls around them as well, and allow them to score as well. So, yeah, it's a real tough one to preview, because I really would love to be being more positive, but I will. Let's just look at the ins and outs. And talk about them a little bit, and maybe some positive is there, but it is difficult when you see some of the players that have gone out, and it is a real interesting selection. So the outs, it is disappointing to see Tom Cochrane go out. You'd love to have seen him get a chance at a showdown but I can't remember if he played it. I think he was injured. I in my mind he hasn't played a showdown yet, but I could be wrong. So I do apologize if I've got that wrong. But it would have loved to have seen him got his shot here. But he hasn't gotten a whole lot of the ball. particularly last week. And, they're going to try something different here. So Tom Cochrane out, omitted. Harrison Ram omitted. Todd Marshall omitted. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Ewan McKinlay and Asaf Radically, of course, injured for the season out of last week's game. So those are the two real big misses. Based on the form they've been in this year, it's certainly wouldn't have been omitted. The ins, Ollie Wines comes in off his managed week, so hopefully he can have an impact because we've seen at his best this year, and particularly like the first showdown, he's been really, really good. But he had a few probably weeks where his time on ground numbers were starting to drop, and he's just looking like a little bit diminished return. So again, that knee, what if he's really having to manage a knee injury or just a degenerative knee issue? Hopefully he's fresh enough to come in because we really need an Ollie Wines at his what the best he can give this week or at this point in his career. We really need that. So yeah, hopefully Ollie Wines is going to really benefit from that week of rest and come in fit and firing. I certainly don't question his intent at all to want to be fit and firing. It's actually, can his body go with the intent that he want to give in the showdown? So that'll be a really interesting one. Dante Vicentini comes in. Jacob Ware comes in. Jacob Ware, I was down at Unley Oval last week, and he's getting a fair bit of the ball. So good to see him. Hopefully, get his chance to show his wares again at the AFL level. Jacob Ware's back in. And Mitch Sadow comes in. I think he's kicked 6 goals across the last couple of weeks at Sandford level. So he gets to come in and hopefully bring a similar, like if he can get around the ball a little bit more and get a goal or two, that would be fantastic. And of course, BZT, Brandon Zerk-Thatcher comes in. Since his back injury and his injuries he's had after his reasonable first year. We remember 2024 as a reasonable first year on the side. But since his injuries at the preseason last year, and he just hasn't found a way back in. But he, of course, was meant to be playing at Unley Oval last week again in the game against Sturt for the Maggies, but he was pulled out of the game to make sure he was going to be wasn't going to cop any injuries because of what happened to us on Saturday night at the AFL level. So Brandon Zerk-Thatcher comes in, and it's a really, man, what an opportunity for Brandon Zerk-Thatcher. I have mentioned a few times on the podcast, I haven't gotten to watch too much Sandford. That's why I wanted to go down last week, was to see some, and ironically, I didn't get to see Brandon Zerk-Thatcher. He was standing 15 metres away from me at one point, but he was obviously in his Port Adelaide street clothes because he was getting ready for the showdown. So again, I still haven't seen him in person. But watching him at training earlier this year, he looked really lumbered, but he's played some okay footy at the Sandford level. So hopefully he can come in and he just needs to perform. I'm not going to ask for a best on ground performance from him, although if the game requires it, but he just needs to perform, play second fiddle to Aaliyah down back, and he's going to be really, really required because, of course, Harrison Ram being out means that we're going, well, a little bit shorter than we have the last few weeks, of course. And even I'd sit there and go, well, Vicentini, we're going to be playing 2 rucks again, so there's going to be an extra tool that can get thrown back. But, of course, craft-wise, a little bit more raw on that front. So, but luckily we'll be able to, the 2 ruck system will have a crack at that a little bit. But it's a little bit of necessity, or just bringing guys in and giving them games, and guys that are a little bit out of form go out. So, the ins and outs are an interesting one. I certainly think it's bold. I think it's rewarding some decent form as well, and the likes of, Mitch Zaddo in particular, Jacob Ware taking the demotion down to Sandford level the right way and going down and playing some decent footy. Zerk-Thatcher probably gets his opportunity because of necessity, but he's at least been playing and putting a string of games together. Ollie Wine's coming in, of course, and Vicentini's one we like, and they're just trying something a little bit different because they're, Harrison Ram, as he's still so raw, and I think like he's had his exposure at the level. Now go back down, get some games under your belt again, get a little bit more of the ball, because just going in and out. I think he had 1 disposal last week. It's just like you're not finding enough of the ball. It's your core role as a defender, but you still want to try to find a way to get. You still need to find a way to the ball, and I look forward to what he can provide in the future, because I think his athletic traits and his size just mean that once he kind of grows into his body, so to speak, as an AFL player, he's going to be really, really good. But the Todd Marshall omission, obviously. I think when Jamie and I talked earlier this week, we talked about the fact that Todd Marshall might just keep his spot out of necessity, but he's still, despite everything going on, they've made the bold choice, and I think the right choice, that he needs to play some Sandford footy. He needs to get some form back, maybe out of the spotlight, maybe, and not to say the Sandfuls obviously any kind of easy league, but it is, again, it's not the AFL level. It is minor league football, so to speak, and so maybe you can go down there and the game slows down a little bit for him again, and you can find some form, find some confidence, because I think that Todd Marshall just looks a player devoid of confidence at the moment, and there's only so long you can go on carrying that kind of player. But look, I still wish the best for Todd going forward, and hope by some it's a concerning time for his career at the moment, but I really would like to see Todd Marshall get one more crack at and have one more kind of elite, whatever amount of time it comes to, an elite period at the AFL level again, because we do love Todd. He's gone through a lot in his life, and he deserves to have a little bit of a kind of sunshiny period to his career again. And this year's been a bit of a turbulent one with the positional changes and all that. So yeah, those are the ins and outs for us. Of course, just the Crows have had a few less ins and outs there, but they've got Isaac coming and Josh Worrell coming in. So the Josh Worrell story has been funny this week, but he comes in. Omitted Nick Murray, and the big one, Wayne Miller, injured. Wayne Miller, a player that when the Showdown medal was being given out in the first Showdown this year, I thought Wayne Miller's name was all over it. And while I think it was a Sam Berry that won it, I'm pretty sure. Once I looked at the stats and saw what Sam Berry's game was, I didn't have too much issue with him winning it either. Sorry, as I stifle a yawn. But I just remember Wayne Miller's game just felt the most impactful to me watching the game, just as an armchair quarterback, so to speak. So Wayne Miller being injured is a really, really big one. Of course, they've playing some pretty good footy down back. Mark Keane's come in. He obviously didn't play in the first Showdown this year, but he was obviously been a bit of a villain for us in previous Showdowns over the past couple of years. Mark Keane's been back in for the last couple of weeks for them. James Borlay's playing some pretty good footy down there for them. Hugo Hall-Kahan, who's their mid-season draftee, he's been coming in and settled in very, very nicely. And of course, Dan Curtin's been, I think he played his first game of the season and then the first Showdown. He's obviously got a fair run of games under his belt since then. Jordan Dawson, what a year he's had, obviously, negatively with the tragedy, the family tragedies he's dealt with, but what a year he's having on field as well. And when you consider what he's gone through in his personal life, it's actually just really, really impressive. And I can't say a bad word about what he's doing. It's just incredible. So they've had a lot of players either come back or they were just coming back, or they weren't in the side yet when we played them earlier this year, and they're really starting to hum in their form. Riley Thilthorpe, who looked really all out of sorts when we first played them this year, he looks a lot better. Rankin's playing. I think Rankin's finally starting to just find a little bit of form, but I don't watch a whole lot of Crows footy. Hate watch maybe, but so yeah, their forms are starting to quietly hum along quite nicely, more closer to the form that they were in last year, which is unfortunate as a team that would like to try to look at a win here. But like you just look across the line, you look at that, like we've got our work cut out for us as a back line. Of course, our defensive structure has really held us in good stead this year, but there's only so much you can hold up against a side as well stacked as this one, and particularly with the fact that they're going to have, they could be rolling out there. I don't know what the time and ground numbers for the Walker, Fogarty, Thilthorpe all together in the forward line, but still there's always going to be some fairly tall timber to contend with. And for a back line that has gone through such fundamental force shake-up over the past few weeks, particularly, Zerk Thatcher's going to, have his work cut out for him in his first game back in the AFL side. Lockie Jones is probably going to need to have one of his better games. I said a few times last week, I think last week he kind of lost out in a couple of contests just by his not just in the contest, his pre-contest positioning and just how much space he gave his direct opponent. And, it's going to be as much about defending the ball coming in, but with the fact that the Crows, now they're playing in the midfield, we're going to have to make sure that we're doing a fairly good job in the midfield, but they're going to get some good balls and good looks in. It's going to come down to some moments of brilliance, hopefully on our end in 1v1 defending, and kind of not letting them dictate where the ball's going inside 50 and whatnot. So it's a massive task ahead. Darcy Byrne-Jones has been playing some really, really good footy, so he's going to have to use his leadership down there. Of course, Aaliyah as well, and and the young bucks in the likes of Josh Lyon and Logan Evans continue to have good weeks. And look, they're gonna if they can all put together a pretty good performance, and Zerk Thatcher can come in and not look the shell that he's looked at times, then they're gonna give us a chance to be in the game. But then it's going to come down to as you move forward. Obviously, Jack Lukosius in the side, is not even in or out, but it felt like he was an out. It's funny. When I looked at the ins and outs, I was like, wait, Jack Lukosius isn't in. And then I realized, well, of course he's not an in because he played last week. He's just staying in the side. But because in my brain he'd gotten injured, I was like, no, he's going to be in again. But yeah, that's just my my brain, me and my brain, huh? So Lukosius stays in, and look, as long as thankfully a Baker's cyst isn't anything, in the macro of all joints and muscles and stuff, it's not a major thing. But hopefully what that does is just as far as the pain goes, that isn't going to be an issue for him because his penetration is going to be really key if he can have a similar get some of the ball, get a decent amount of the ball. Obviously, he's a goal scoring threat if he can get forward as well, but his penetration, even just his ability to work in the intercept game, like if the game's going the other way, just extra height, drop behind the ball, and but we want to see him using that ranging kick to penetrate and challenge that Crows back line as well. Obviously, the mid's going to have it's going to be an interesting battle. I think, obviously, Lachlan McAndrew versus Jordan Sweet. Jordan Sweet's put some really good performances on the board against some good ruckmen over the past few weeks. So what he can do and continue to do there, but Lachlan McAndrew is actually having a really, really good, nice season for a player that's just kind of seemingly popped up out of nowhere. Oh, not obviously getting talked about in preseason, but beyond that, before that, he hadn't had a whole lot of exposure at the level. So, but the Crows are loving what he's doing. So, and as they should be, he's been actually having a reasonable year, and clearance and hit out numbers between the two sides are pretty similar this year at statistically average week to week this year. So if Jordan Sweet can get a little bit of that hit out domination, just make some gap there, and then we can extrapolate that out into some clearance. I said clearance numbers have been interesting the last few weeks. Last week it was exactly even at stoppage and center clearance. The week before against Sydney, we actually got a pretty good run on center clearance and stoppage. We just couldn't convert it into actually good quality entries inside fit, or some wayward conversion early, and then just weren't using the ball well at times. So yeah, it's ball use. It's going to be ball use. It's going to be disposal efficiency. It's going to be making sure that gap, like they've got a 2% better disposal efficiency on the year. If it gets more than that in this game, then we're going to be probably shit out of luck. But if we can actually bridge that gap and make sure that gap, where that gap is bridging, is very much in going inside 50 as well, then that'll help us out. But yeah, you're going to need some fairly good performances from the likes of obviously Butters. We're going to need to probably have one of his better games in his last few games at Port Adelaide. Jason Horne-Francis, want to see him go off, and both down forward and in his midfield. You hope Jason Horne-Francis is at north of 60% of CBAs, as well as getting his forward time as well. And then the squirts of Joe Richards in there. I've been seeing some interesting mixes in the middle, like Joe Richards in there, Jace Burgoyne in there, Zach Butters starting up forward in the last few weeks. So those kind of things, what they mix up there will be interesting. Of course, we're going to need to see Mitch Georgiades. If he has 4 to 5 shots on goal, he needs to be converting at north of 50%. His conversion rate this year has dropped to 43%, which I think is beyond Jake Waterman, who's at 42% or something like that. I think in the top 15 or 20 goal kickers in the league, Mitch Georgiades and Jake Waterman are the two worst in conversion rates. Most are at least at 50, and a lot of the better ones are at 60. And, Jack Gunston's played 5 games less than Mitch and has 4 more goals. He's going to need to convert. It's going to come down to, it is partly our inside 50 entries. We want to see Mitch Georgiades maybe get some easier opportunities at goal, but then, the knock on him this year has been his conversion of easy opportunities. And earlier in the year, he was actually making the most of some of those 40 to 50 meter out acute ankle opportunities. Last week he didn't. And that's really, really started to hurt his overall goal scoring, as he's not converting the tough ones. The old Ken Hinkleyism that Ken Hinkley's brought up in commentary a couple of times this year has been, Mitch Georgiades kicks the hard ones, misses the easy ones. Well, now he's not getting many easy opportunities at all. unfortunately, in the last few weeks. And then he's missing more than half of his hard ones. So it's really dropping the scoring down. If he gets 4 or 5 shots at goal, we're going to need to see, 3 goals, 1, 3 goals, 2, 4 goals, 2, whatever. We want to see that conversion rate north of 50% comfortably this week to have a shot at winning. Because the ball, he's going to get his looks. He's got to take his marks, of course, but he's going to get his looks. And then, obviously, if he can do that, be ably supported by, maybe Berry pops up with 1 or 2, Durden pops up with, hopefully gets a new Corey Durden goal streak. Let's start one again this week. If Mitch kicks 3 or 4, Berry, Durden, etc., Bammett, keep his goal streak going. They're just going to have the spread of scoring to compete and hopefully we're going to need to score 85, 90 points at least to win this one. That's obviously relying on a pretty good defensive effort to keep the Crows below 90. We're going to have to, that's going to be, it's going to be first to 90 wins kind of stuff. And that's going to require Mitch Georgiades to take his opportunities, Whitlock pop up with a couple, and you Berry, you Durden, and Horn Francis maybe with a couple as well, and just spread those goals around, whatever mids you want to choose. Jordan Sweet pops up with his one hustled out of the ruck or something. And obviously Mitch Zadao as well coming in would be nice to see him continue his Sandford goal scoring at the top level. So, look, a massive, massive game coming up. Like I said, my expectations are, my head is saying, look, there's not a super large chance of a win here, but look, showdowns are showdowns, and we've had our miracle wins at times. The Crows have had probably maybe too many too many to my liking in the last few years, and their record in the last 10 matches is 7-3 against us, and the all-time showdown differentials maybe getting a little bit too far out there for us at the moment. They're a few games ahead now. We'd like to start bridging that a little bit, but I'm not sure I'm expecting it this week. But again, I think our structural integrity, as long as we don't completely let that slip at all, the weather's looking pretty good. So, that horror showdown last year where the Crows couldn't do anything wrong and we couldn't really handle it. The Crows were handling it was like a dry weather day, and we were handling it like it was the conditions they were. Conditions should be pretty good. It's going to be chilly across the week, but there's not really any rain around. Like, we've obviously, those of us in Adelaide have been enjoying some pretty nice sunny June weather over the last couple of days. And that looks to continue all the way through, I think, Sunday, Monday. I think the showers return. So conditions should be optimal to play decent footy. It's just going to take hopefully adhering to the structural integrity that Josh Carr's coaching has put into us this year. And that is kind of the underbelly of what's been allowing us to have these competitive performances. And then as long as we adhere to that, then it's going to be taking some chances as well. Going to need to take some chances. Going to need to be a bit cleaner with the ball. If we can do those things, then there's every chance of us keeping this close and then being in the shot of, that kind of, if we're within 3 or 4 goals in the last quarter, and, obviously I'd love to be up, but, there's always going to be an opportunity that if we're within, we're going to keep it close and then, have a surge home and see what can happen. So, the opportunity's there. I will say my head probably says we lose by 20 or 30, but my heart says let's go for the miracle win and be within punching distance of. Be within punching distance. I guess that works too, but we'd be within striking distance in the last quarter and try to strike. Try to have that surge forward, that surge home. Try to win the game. Take the game on. Try to win it. And the Crows will be probably, if they do have a marginal lead in the last quarter, they'll try to hold it, and we're just going to surge home, take some chances, and see what we can do. I'll of course be down there. Jamie will be as well. All going well, I assume. So say good day if you're around. Looking forward to it. Regardless of where the teams are at, I'm always going to turn up on Showdown Day and try to cheer the boys home for what is looking like it would be one of the all-time Showdown upsets if we can get the job done. But it's all there for us. It's a showdown. You never know what's going to happen. Nothing more to say from me. I've rambled on here for almost 40 minutes straight, and I think that's about me done. I am fucking knackered. I need to lubricate with some West Coast IPAs here. So, can the fucking pair. Fuck the fucking plastic Crows. Let's get the job done. Cheers, guys. Thank you for listening. We'll be back here on Wednesday in your ear holes for the review. Whatever may come, whatever happens on the night, we'll be here to review it all. Your weekly therapy session with Dave and Jamie next week. Thank you. Good night.